This is for John Dankosky and for all in his audience who might want to hear from one more candidate. That is I, Mark Stewart Greenstein. I was in the audience, not on stage. We're not yet at the 7,500 mark. We'll get there. The returns are coming in slowly, but we'll be on the ballot. So, with a 5-person race, it'll be even more interesting than what you had tonight. John helped make it interesting, and thank you for your prodding at the right times. Let me address 3 questions that John had of Oz and Ned if I were on stage. So, number 1 is about higher tax rates. John, you were really pointed about, Ned, would you be raising any taxes? And he had to hedge somewhat. I don't. Okay? I can say that if it's under my control, now remember, there's a General Assembly that has ultimately the taxing authority. I have at best veto power. But I have prodding power, and if I get 51% of the vote in a 5-way race, then the General Assembly is not going to stop us. They do it at their peril. Okay, you go against what 51% of the public who voted for an otherwise nobody named Mark Stewart Greenstein want, you're not going to get reelected in 2020. I am a person who wants to do the public's will. And it's pretty clear, though I don't think Oz gets this, that some tax reduction has to be done. I would do it in 3 years. And we can do it in 3 years, get rid of the income tax that fast if you use private spending for welfare instead of state. Private does welfare better. It leaves the state with at most $10 billion a year to do the necessary things that private can't do as well. It has to do crime control, imprisonment. It has to do mental health because that often leads to crime. It has to do child welfare. It has to do some elements of transportation, not all. Beyond that, private can do an awful lot. So my tax pledge is to go with private first so that we can reduce spending, and a tax cut then becomes a no-brainer. As I perceive it, 43% personal income tax can be reduced in the first year, with, at that point, only a 10% reduction to the vast majority of our divisions, okay? So, some divisions, they get the benefit of being privately funded and not state. I think that's about 20% of our current expense. 2/3, 67%, get funded at 90% of what we had before. John, every private business that's been around for at least a decade has at one point or other had to slim down by 10%. We can ask that of the state. It can do it. Now, there's one thing you can't slim down, that is the debt. You got to pay it at 100%. I'd actually like to be paying it at more than 100%. So that the debt, which does nothing for us, gets reduced. And by the end of 4 or 5 years, we're down to 0 or close. Now, if I eke out a win, but not with 51%, then there's still a December referendum that may show us that really 51% or more really do want tax lessening, personal income tax getting down to 0. If I'm on the defensive and don't win that referendum, then the General Assembly is more in control, but they'll have me saying high taxes are what hurts the economy. And yes, you led with the fact our economy has been stagnant to downhill ever since the income tax was imposed in 1991. So my budget has a reduction to every department that is necessary, but only 10%. For those that are not necessary, it's 80 to 100%. But the good things that are not necessary get funded the best way possible by you and I who see the good work they do or the not so good work they do and don't fund them as well. Over the course of 2 years, this gets the right distribution. Right, because I know of no better. It's certainly not right for a General Assembly to log roll. You give me this, I'll give you that. It's certainly not right for a General Assembly person to vote for something because some campaign donors behind it. It's certainly not right for a General Assembly person to vote for something because he hasn't read the bill. But we get that. So it's a far better distribution when individuals who are informed vote with their own money, their own private donations for 30%, and their demanded donations 70%, but it still gets channeled the way people want. I want more of my taxes to go to mental health. I want less of it to go to transportation. Environmental protection might be high on some people's lists. Local schools getting better funding for athletics might be high on some people's lists. Let them decide. We can have a smorgasbord of charitable activities that are traditionally done by the state, intermixed now with other charities that have not been done by the state, and let those charities thrive because people are going to have more money and more knowledge that their money will be directly affecting instead of subject to the machinations of the General Assembly or bureaucrats along the way, so that there is indeed a lot of wastage. And yes, the waste is, I don't think it's high, but it's so galling even when it exists once or twice. When you have a Whiting employee who abused people, and on tape, the supervisors see this over and over, do nothing, they're not fired, and they keep their pensions. Not right. When you have a lottery director who resigns but is voted a 6-month severance at an even higher salary, it's unheard of. And those extra 6 months got Ann Noble to 10 years of vesting, which means the state of Connecticut at 10 years pays her extra benefits for her life. I'm not blaming Ann. I'm blaming every board member that approves this. This is not good governance. That comes to a stop. DMV came up. There are people at DMV who are appointees that sleep on the job literally, and it's well known, and they're paid for it. I witnessed this. Okay? Remember, I petitioned at DMVs at times. I know some of what goes on there, and it's not in the public's favor. If we get serious for 18 months, 2 years for sure, watch how outside businesses finally come to open divisions in Connecticut. Okay, the stymieing that we've seen is because businesses don't trust where will Connecticut look for revenue next, because traditionally it's been from businesses that are successful. We can't do that anymore. So that bridges, John, to your next concern. It was about the, well, I'll call it corporate welfare. Dan Malloy's First Five, which funded 5 big companies to be here, stay here, and grow. I'm ambivalent. I would say in an ideal Connecticut, which I do think we can have, we don't have any corporate welfare. Connecticut's good enough for companies to come on their own, which is what happened in the 70s and 80s. We can get that back. But under the circumstances of 2010, 2011, I don't blame Governor Malloy because we didn't have much else to lure. So as Ned called them, anchors, some anchor companies, Sikorsky was his example, that really are needed by the community under this current status, yes. Now, my substitute would be one that doesn't cost the state any money except possibly loan guarantees. I do first, not 5, but 500 for schools. And I will back schools with loans in case the economy was so bad, like 2008 level recession. That level, I think the state should step in. But don't expect that, and expect that you who build a school are going to get it funded. You who build a highway are going to get your investment returned. And by the way, that is how we build a Merritt Parkway without any state money. We'll back the loan for investors who then can recoup money by charging fees, How they want to charge is up to them, but I think they'll see at least an 8% return on their money. Maybe you guarantee 2% return so that no matter what, they're not going down. You'll get a Merritt Parkway built in less than a year. How good is that? Oh, by the way, we're not taking down the old Merritt. Okay, the Great Gatsby Highway, I call it. The nice bridges, the trees in the middle. We just have a south of the Merritt right away. It's there now. And we got 6 lanes that we can use. So it's another example of how outside private investment can substitute for state investment. All right, last, John, you mentioned as a joke, people reading newspapers, which we know doesn't happen nearly as much. But I want to say the quality of newspaper is high compared to a news article, which is often not really news. It's infiltrated with opinion and bad research and even intentionally wrong facts. So I believe in traditional reading, and here's the untraditional thing that saves us money. Online schools. This especially helps in the rural areas of Connecticut, where critical mass is hard to get a specialty teacher like for Latin or for anatomy. The banding of people together across the state who might then call in a teacher from Arizona who's really good at teaching anatomy. How good is that? They save money, they get quality teaching. One of the highest costs in rural schooling is the transportation, because almost everybody needs a bus, and a lot of times it's long distance. That too gets alleviated by online education. Don't be afraid of it. Kids learn really well. I'm sitting in a classroom right now. We have classes in Newington that help kids on the SAT, but guess what? They beam in. Yeah, that laptop is there to let anyone, and we had kids from Colorado, California, Chicago, on our practice test last weekend. We had other states joining in for our SAT and ACT prep. It works well. It allows good teachers to be in Connecticut classrooms even if they live far away, even if they live out of state. That will improve education even more. John, thanks for asking. Thanks for moderating. And I look forward to being on the other side of the table next time around. Thanks again. Good night.